Hope Carpool Q&A. What's going on, Tom?
Good.
Very good. Traffic edition today.
Yeah, we
Slogging along the highway.
crawling here, hoping to make it back in time for
Yeah,
preaching.
had to ditch church early down south, but it was good sermon, good time, had some new people.
Yeah.
Today we've got some questions around time management. Believe it
Of
or
all
not.
things.
Yeah, of all things. Yeah, time management. How a pastor should plan their time. Well, first question, Tom. How should a pastor manage his time with the roles and responsibilities, being a father, being a husband, being a pastor? You right?
Hang on. This thing was flapping.
Set up a tea towel to get the...
Nah, this isn't going in the video. Shut up. All right, I reckon put her up there.
Who's this? That's going in the video. Okay.
Yeah, what? How should?
Yeah, how should a pastor manage his time and responsibilities with being an ordained elder and probably being a husband, being a father?
He shouldn't plan preaching engagements so close together, half an hour away. That's one thing he shouldn't do. It doesn't allow for traffic. Lesson learned. No regrets. Okay, so yeah, you're right. Any pastor who's worth his salt will have lots of other responsibilities as well, and yet will be a professional at saying no and at delegating. In other words, he will have other responsibilities because he's just that kind of man, but one of his chief responsibilities is keeping his chief responsibility, which is church, the main thing, or at least keeping himself available for the sake of the local church, because that is the purpose of his calling in life. So yeah, and any pastor that is a respected man, a good candidate to be an elder, will probably also have a family, or at least a wife or a girlfriend, maybe in the early stages, and have kids then, and of course have his own catechism and teaching of his own children at home, and probably other responsibilities that just naturally come up by being a man of God that people look for. So maybe a speaker, maybe a contributor to journals or books or debates and conferences, things like that. But definitely the main thing that a pastor needs to set in his mind in terms of time management is that every decision for an engagement, every decision that affects his time will be weighed up against the metric of, does this build the kingdom through the winning and edifying of souls, primarily in and through the local church. For everything he does, every engagement he says yes or no to, how much time he gives to his family and doesn't give to his family, because there's a way to overemphasize his ability to lead his family well, and it basically means his wife always has him home whenever she wants him. Well, no, that's not balanced leadership either. He should be leading his home in such a way as to be able to train his wife to know that everything he's doing is for the sake of the kingdom in and through the local church. That's a really broad, vague answer to it.
Yeah.
He needs to be a professional at saying no to things that he could do, which would be good, but he just won't do because it would get in the way of his local church and his family. He needs to say no to certain stuff in the church because his job is primarily preaching the word and prayer. So do you want some more specifics around tasks in the week, or?
Just, I guess, with being a father and a husband, and then a pastor, how do you hold in tension those two responsibilities you have to your own family, and then to the people that God's given you as a flock?
Well, I kind of marry the two into one purpose. What is good for the local church is to see me as an involved, discipling, loving father and loving, shepherding husband. That's what my church needs to see. And also, my children need to see that their father, whatever job he has, he gives himself 100% as they should, with whatever job they have. But it happens that their father is a pastor, and so they should see that he gives his all, his life, his blood, sweat and tears to the church. and that he should be giving an example to his children of what a life well lived this side of eternity looks like,
Yep.
which is in the service of God, and especially if you have the calling, in the service of a local church vocationally as a pastor. So I see them, it's not divorced like other jobs might be. My church needs me to be a good father, and that's actually how I be a good shepherd and pastor, is exemplify to people what raising sons, I have sons, looks like, what raising children, what being a responsible husband and father looks like. So the two purposes are really one.
Yep.
Because I see that my whole mission in life is to serve God through the preaching of the gospel and the planting of churches.
Yeah, very good.
That requires that the husband and the pastor has gotten his wife on board, right? When he got a wife, or if he got called to the ministry after he was married, then he got his wife on board with the mission of his life early on. You don't want to have to be convincing your wife, and therefore kids, but primarily your wife, at every decision you need to make. No, this is going to be good for the kingdom because, or here's why you should be okay with this. Rather, early on, before those engagements and the busyness and the commitments start coming up, you want to have convinced her your mission on life, on earth, is to support me in my mission. That's what being a wife means.
Yep.
And my mission on earth, in life, is to preach the gospel, grow the church, build the kingdom. And so that she's with a hearty amen. Not that she's ever saying, hey, pump the brakes here, we need more time together, or hey, you haven't seen the kids, or hey, we need to do this. Or, it's not that she's never doing that. That's part of the way she helps you. But you've made clear early on, this is the prism through which we make all our decisions. And she's on board saying, yeah, I'm not just going to want my husband home more of the time, or just ask you to pull back from kingdom opportunities because I want you to. I'm on board with you. I'm joining your mission. So that's important.
Yep. Cool. So during the week, you're doing many things. You know, you're preparing for your sermons, you're doing marriage counseling, you're catching up with guys, or you're studying the Word of God, doing things with your family. You got this opportunity here. You're training these men to be preachers.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize those just day-to-day things you're doing every day? And how do you give them the time that they need, but also have time for the other things you need?
Yeah, okay. I use what was given to me by my principal in high school. I use a priorities matrix. So you can divide your piece of paper into 4 columns, into 4 squares. Across the top you've got important, unimportant, and down the Y column you've got urgent, non-urgent.
Okay.
And everything in life will end up falling at different seasons, and at different, even week to week it'll change, but everything that you need to do will fall into one of those things. I need to plan, stand firm confidence. Is that important?
Yep.
Well, how do you measure importance? Yeah, it's important because lots of people will be affected if it's not. Lots of kingdom opportunities will be lost if we don't do it well. Yes, it's very important. Okay. I also need to feed my dog. Is that very important? Not really. My dog can go a couple of days without food. That's how God designed him, you know. Sorry to the dog lovers out there. That's technically less important.
Yep.
Okay, but what about urgency? Is stand firm urgent? Has to happen right now? Well, maybe. Compared to what? Well, my dog hasn't eaten for a day and a half. I've just realised the water bowl has been overturned and is empty. Is that more urgent than stand firm? Yeah, actually it is. Right? So everything from the little just tasks and chores of the house all the way up to ministry goals and events, everything fits into the prism of how important is it, but also how urgent is it. Now, if something finds itself into the top corner that is both urgent and important, that's what you spend all your time on. So week to week for the pastor, that is the preaching of the word and prayer. That is the thing that never moves out of that category, out of that box. It is always important. It is always urgent. However, compared to some other things, in the week, like maybe a crisis that comes up, I might be able to push it into the not as urgent category if I can do it on Thursday and Friday because I've got a couple of big issues to sort out early in the week, right? So this prism just becomes very. Early days, I used to always write everything on a piece of paper. These days, I just think about it. Is how urgent, how important, and put everything into a long line of to-do lists. And that will help you categorize the importance and the urgency of different tasks. What you should do now compared to what you absolutely have to be done. So other things like pre-marriage counseling.
Yep.
Important, not always super urgent. If you know that they're getting married in 6 months or 4 months, I could do all of my sessions in 2 weeks with them if we wanted to. One an afternoon sort of thing. So not extremely urgent. But very important. Or other things like training leaders. Okay, really important. How urgent? Well, not so urgent I can't knock it back a couple of weeks. Okay, or a couple of months if something really big comes up. Like when I broke my leg, there was a couple of things that got pushed off because I couldn't do meetings at the time, etc. Because while extremely important, like we've spoken about, I think in the last couple of sessions, extremely important to raise leaders, but the church isn't going to drop next week if we don't do it, because I'm still here. And the elders are still in place, right? So yeah, always weigh everything up according to importance and urgent. And I say that because some people will think of things as super important, which means it has to happen now, and you've crippled yourself, because there are actually some things that are very important and can wait.
Yep.
And some things are very urgent but not important. And other guys get very anxious around that. The grass has to get mowed, or I need to fix that on the church website, or I forgot to call that person about seeing if they can stand into something really, really urgent. You go, well, actually, it's urgent, but not very important. And that's when you need to either delegate or just boot that.
Yep.
Just don't do it. Who cares? Because you're just one person, or you delegate it. That's always the option. If something's falling, if you're very top heavy, everything is important and everything is urgent, that's a sign you need to delegate other things out the back of your matrix to other people, because your life is, everything is due tomorrow or yesterday, and your sermons will be bad. Your meetups will be pressured. You won't have time for free time or flexibility or crises to come up, right? If your life, and this is many pastors as well, is all in the non-urgent, non-important section, then you need to set some goals for the kingdom and get a little bit of stress going, because only one life will soon be passed.
Yep.
Only what's done for Christ will last. So get busy, start burning that candle a bit. But that's a good helpful matrix. Sermon prep is always priority for me. Not every single day, because I can push it back a couple of days, but every single week. If I get to Thursday and I just haven't had sufficient time because crises came up, then I'll just call my meetings and say, sorry, I can't do it, we'll have to meet up next week. I'm never going to put off the preparation of the Word of God. So I have, and I'm sure I will again, but that is very unideal. And as far as I look on my own sermons, it's always noticeable for me, and it's not the right way to honor the Word of God.
Yep.
It's the centrality of the job.
In the mix of all that, how important is sleep?
Yeah, very important. Absolutely. Long term, and I'm talking over a few months. Sometimes there's a couple of months where things just pile up. Everything's in the urgent, important category. You're always playing catch up. You're booting and delegating as much as you can. You're bucketing water out of the bottom of the ship. And that's just a season sometimes. You just need to realize we're going around a certain cape on this journey. It's going to be hectic, and in a couple of months we'll be clear. And sometimes I've sat down with my wife, Joy, and just gone, okay, from now until June, it's going to be living hell. And the only way I can see around that is preaching less, which I can't do. I will not do. Or taking leave, or seeing some of these things not done, and that's just not these things, even though it will cause us a living hell for the next 3 months, those things are so on mission that we have agreed to as a team that this is worth it. This is an investment we need to work on. And she'll say yes to this, no to that. Okay, I'm okay with this. Well, why don't we make sure we bucket? We block out these times to spend together. How can I help you? And that's where I said before, your wife is so important. And especially in terms of time management, having a wife, being with an amazing woman who has joined your mission and is your companion, as we see in Genesis, your helper, makes I think I'm 50 to 100 times more productive because I have joy than if I did not. Is there some ways that also takes away from you your ability to be really flexible and really free? Yes, it does. But if I did not have joy, there'd be 1,000 other things that aren't getting done in my life, or that are getting done poorly, or I'm not looking after myself. I need her to, remind me, how much you sleeping, what are you eating? She cooks for me like a private chef in an amazingly cheap way for what she makes. But she, my food, my clothing, my planning. She helps me with my schedule. She helps me think through situations and crises and theological things and church matters. She's massive. So having a wife is big, not just helping in general, but on time management.
Yeah.
Is amazing. So anyway, sleep. Going back to what I said, every now and then you got to look ahead and go, okay, there's a valley of sleepless destitute coming up. I'll push through it. But in the long term, you never want to tolerate, especially if you can help it, you never want to tolerate lack of sleep. I have 2 cars that are written off in my name as a testimony to the fact that as a young man, I did not prioritize sleep enough, and God judged me for it. God let me see the fruit of that kind of labor. They just ignored Psalm 127. If God isn't in this building, we're building in vain. If God's not keeping watch, then we're keeping watch in vain over the city. What's the next line? God gives to his beloved sleep. Okay? Otherwise, you're just working anxiously, serving anxiously, never resting, never enjoying the fruit of your labor. That's not a sign of God's blessedness. So yeah, I'm with Whitfield and with Richard Baxter. Like, a candle's meant to be burned, so let's burn ourselves out. I don't believe in burnout. On the other hand, not Sabbathing properly in God's periodic creational pattern of rest.
Yeah.
Right? 8 hours a day, 1 day a week. That's not doing that is deadly, and you'll become less productive, less clear-headed. Memory will drop, productivity will drop, your testosterone will drop, which as a guy will affect everything else. Your sexual health will drop, your physical health will drop, your frustration skyrockets, your blood pressure grows. It's terrible. It's suicide. Don't neglect sleep. Guys should be getting, especially in ministry, should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you said a huge part of the pastor's responsibility time-wise is to the word and for prayer. In terms of a pastor's study,
Yeah.
how much time should be given to the study of the word, and what should he be studying?
Well, he should maybe 3 categories of that. He should have his own private prayer time and time in the Word, personal study. He should have his study for sermons and teaching things, and then he should have his own ongoing development as a teacher of the Word. Okay, personal development in his role. So, prayer time, Bible reading, that will change and look different at all sorts of seasons of life and for all different types of guys. For me, it's usually half an hour to an hour or something like that in the mornings before I get into everything. And then there should be study of the word for your sermons. Now that'll change again, because I've got 2 sermons to preach, 2 different sermons to preach. So a lot of guys only have 1 sermon to preach, so they can give more time to that 1 sermon. And some guys take a lot longer to read things, and some dudes will take 30 hours to prepare for a sermon, which is, it's not a sin. And sure, you're reading a bunch of stuff, but a guy who is apt in his trade, if we want to use a crude language like that about preaching, should not take that long to study it. I mean, have you never read the passage before? Have you never done that in your Bible reading and then thought, I'm going to look at a commentary on this? He should be able to do it in less time than that. But think, if he's doing 2 sermons, that's 60 hours a week. He's got no time for meeting anybody. If he's taking 30 hours to prepare for a sermon every week, he's got 10 hours left for meetings, councils, crises, evangelism, meetings. Man, that's not a lot of time. So the guys should be, I reckon, I've said this before, we had another episode about it, but 1 to 8 hours per sermon should be plenty for a guy who's because that goes hand in hand with the next part. You should be doing about 5 to 10 hours a week of just self-directed learning on stuff that you want to learn, right? Lectures, maybe that counts as guys who are part-time studying like I am, and so you're developing yourself that way. But if you take all those things hand in hand, your own private reading and study, sermon work, plus personal development in terms of doctrinal understanding and things, that will lessen your overall time required to write a sermon. Okay. Yep. And like I said, it was a bit of an investment early days, but I say that if you start doing 2 sermons, then you will actually end up saving you time in the week, because you will have double the preparation experience, and you will get better at writing sermons quicker and studying quicker in the long haul. So give yourself 6 months of doing 2 sermons a week. That you're going to be, you're probably able at that point to prepare 2 sermons in less time than an ordinary guy takes to do 1. Because it's just a matter of muscle memory. The more you use the muscle and those mental muscles, the more apt they will get.
What should be the sort of books, the sort of reading material that a pastor should be picking up to read in sort of the...
I'm gonna spout off a few ideas, and I'm just gonna go on record as saying I can't remember how much of these are direct recommendation that I'm just stealing from Craig Ireland, who is instrumental in training me for ministry back in my early days, and who is still a mentor of mine. So I'm just gonna say stuff like it's mine, and half of it might be what he told me when I asked him this question years ago. So you should be reading systematic theology books, church history, historical theology, missions biographies, and commentaries. But commentaries will really come into other areas of your job. If you were just talking about your own personal development in theology, systematic theologies. If a pastor does not have a really good grasp on systematic theology, the different categories of doctrine, how they relate to each other, you will not be a good preacher. You will not be able to help and counsel and understand people's questions. Study systematic theology. The other one was church history. So you want to know your church history. Otherwise, again, you're just going to be so anachronistic. You're going to be ignorant of the development of the church throughout time. You're going to think that everyone's always thought like you. You're going to have no clue how the Puritans worked or worded things or thought or taught. It's going to be very, very unhelpful. So you want good church history to understand how God has been building his church. Thirdly, church historical theology. That's different from church history. Historical theology is the study of how different doctrines were developed and debated on throughout history. That's very important as well. So understanding what was the Catholic view of this, and the heretical view of this, and the modalistic view of the Trinity. So you want to know historical theology as well. Usually a good systematic theology will have a bit of that thrown in there with it. So systematic theology, church history, historical theology, missionary biographies. I say missionary biographies because not just Christian biographies, but missionary biographies. That will give you a whet your appetite for the mission field and for unreached people groups. Guys like Judson and Taylor and Wesley and Whitfield and David Brainerd and David Livingston. These kinds of biographies keep you hungry for the lost world. That's important, but also gives you these great experiential stories of their life and how God helped them. So that's inspirational. Keeps you alive to the thing. But then also you should be doing some reading of ministry-specific content. So books that we've recommended before: Lectures to My Students by Charles Spurgeon, The Soul Winner by Charles Spurgeon, No Higher Calling by Craig Ireland, a recently released book. It is a tremendous work about what it takes to be an elder in the Church of God.
Better plug his book if we're stealing his ideas.
Yeah. This all might be just in an appendix in his book anyway. I'm probably subject to plagiarism if I
Just
don't
stop the video now.
recommend it.
Just stop the video now and read the book.
Go read Higher Calling. You will not. It's on Kindle. It's one of the best sellers at the moment in religious categories on Amazon. You will not be sorry. That's the sort of stuff you should be studying.
Should the minister, the preacher, be reading much in the non-Christian genre? So like psychology or popular fiction books or medical stuff, or like I don't know.
Now you're turning me into a legalist. Nah, stuff them all. Nah, Spurgeon said that. I actually, that's how I act. I don't read anything that's not any of those categories that I just said. Really, should I? Nah. I listen to TED Talks. And I listen to podcasts to get an idea of where's our world at. What are the people thinking? You know, what does Jordan Peterson say? What do these thought leaders think in our world, so that I can understand our culture, because I'm a missionary to it, but not because I'm genuinely interested. I don't care. And I don't read novels. Everybody says, everybody talks about pastors. You should, what are you doing if you're not reading Tolkien and Lewis, and what was Lord of the Rings? What was Tolkien? What was the other one?
Lewis.
Harry Potter.
Oh,
Who
Harry
wrote that
Potter.
one? Some chick.
Yeah.
And they're like, it gives you poetic blah 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 and stories, and it's the gospel in narrative. And I don't care. I just don't have the time or the heart to read novels. They're cool. I'll watch the movie. I don't have no problem with watching movies.
They're just not a good use of time, you would say.
Well, not my time. I don't care if other people do it. And maybe you should. Maybe there are guys who you really need to get into some novels, but I don't really care.
So for understanding the context and the culture of the day and the popular ideologies, it's really helpful to be on podcasts and listen to, I don't know, when you listen to Catholic podcasts or...
Nah, not Catholic. But no, secular stuff.
Yeah.
The way the world's thinking. Often I'm listening to like popular evangelical ideas about things, because most of them are horrendous, stupid.
So you're not
secular.
You're not listening to it for your own learning.
No,
you're listening to it.
There's nothing to learn in them. No, I'm just figuring out, how does the world think, so that I can know how to present the gospel and present these ideas into our culture.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, where are the idols? Where are the errors? So that I can aim at them and shoot them down properly. That's what I'm doing here.
Cool. On time management, would you recommend any apps or strategies, like just practically managing your time?
Yep. Yeah, I would. There's so I use Notion, which is kind of like an Evernote type thing, or a notes app, but I like it because of its ergonomic, if I can use that word, but its usability. It's very user friendly. And basically it's just a notes app, but you can link your Google Drive, link all of your other accounts to it. You can transfer everything from Evernote over. You can link it with all these different things and document processes that I as a pastor will use. But what it's helpful for, I just have my life split up into a couple of different categories: family, church, university, FECA, which is the denomination I'm on the executive for, and I can't remember the last one. Oh, personal, which is empty. Anyway, the others are family, church, university, and FECA. And then every part of my life will fall into one of those categories. Everything I need to do, everything I need to write down, every link I need to save, every picture I need to store, everything will fall into one of those. So in family, I'll have things like things I need to do for my house, so to-do lists, right? You just go, I need to mow the lawn. Click on family, put in a to-do list. And at the end of the week or the end of the month, end of the day, I'm usually putting all the random additions I've made into their separate subcategories. So everything in my life is categorized. my son needs to go to the doctors for something. All right, that's in that category. That's in that folder. And I just have endless subfolders. But then for church, I'll have all the different ministries, all the different people I'm working with, all the, I've got sermons as one thing, church leadership, eldership, deacons, missions, everything just has a subcategory in there, which means that at any point of the day, when I think, where should I write this down, or where did I write that down, I don't have to fling through all of my Apple Notes and goes, which is just a list of all of them. They're all in categories.
Okay.
And then, so that has just massive. If somebody gives me something to do, I put it straight in there. Somebody says, can you write something for this? I'll put it over in one of those categories. And then you can set little alarms to say, hey, you haven't touched this folder in a while, you need to get back to it. It's so helpful. And I can use it across all of my devices wherever I am. I'm half a second away from opening up the app and writing down something in my sermon. So there's that.
This video is not sponsored by Notion, but there you go.
I have a free account anyway, so they get no money from me. If I had to pay, I wouldn't be using it. But yeah, it's just very helpful. And you can link other people, you can have joint things, joint documents, it's very good. The other, which probably isn't right on this question, but related, you need an Audible account, a Christian audio account, and a Kindle account, so that you can be reading on the go and reading no matter what you are doing. Mowing the lawn, going to the loo, waiting in line at the ATM, anything you're doing, you're half a second away from whipping out your phone and either listening or reading something that will explode your productivity and the amount that you're able to get into your head through reading.
And don't listen at 1 times speed.
No, that is a waste of
It's
human
for
life.
losers.
You need to work up to reading, being able to listen to reading being done at 3 times speed. Probably resting pace is 2 times speed, just as basis.
You got to work yourself up to that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, but where apps, like Audible, I can't remember what other apps. I think Christian Audio, they have the ability to listen at 3 times speed, and it's amazing. But anyway, so there's that. Yeah, but then I also use my Apple. So I use Notion as like my bank of everything. My Apple Notes is sometimes my go-to thing. I just need to write down. My to-do list is actually there, my general to-do list for the week. Every week I clear it, and every day on Sunday, hey, Pastor Tom, can we catch up? Hey, can you do this week? Hey, can I see you this week? I'll just put it on my list. I've just got one big list of to-do lists, so that at every morning, I'm looking at it, what can I squeeze in today? Every evening, I'm looking at it, going, what can I squeeze in tomorrow? And trying to get all of it done by the end of the week. Always thinking with that matrix: urgent, important, non-urgent, not important. And on my app, on my thing, I've also got a folder called Posts and Threads. So I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but I post a lot on social media. I think I stole this from Michael Foster, if I'm giving credit where credit is due. And I've just got a folder in my notes, and in there is just a whole bunch of different threads. So I've just got one note called maybe the future of the church, or one note's called preaching. If you preach on that, you'll just see bulleted 10 or 20 posts that I just think of during the week. That might make a helpful Facebook post. I just write it down, and then at some point during the week, I just copy and paste it, put it on. I have a lot of people ask me, like, you're on Facebook a lot. Unspoken question, is that healthy? I'm like, no, pastors should not be on social media as much as it looks like I'm on social media, but pastors should be on social media to get the gospel out, because it's an amazing public platform. So I post a lot, I don't scroll a lot. I follow very few people, and most of them are obscure pages that I probably wouldn't want to share. There's UFC, meme-related reform pages.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll forgive you. Okay. If someone is just terrible at time management, they want to be in the ministry.
Asking for a friend, Sam?
Yeah, asking for a friend. Someone's just terrible, they're always late in their assignments, they're never getting things done. What's some advice for someone who's just terrible at time management but aspiring to be a minister?
Yeah. And I'll just reiterate, you cannot be a effective, God-glorifying minister if you're terrible at time management. You'll drive people insane, and you'll dishonor God, because eventually your responsibilities will fall flat.
It's probably disqualifying. It's not being above
Yeah, it should be.
reproach.
Yeah. But having said that, I'll say this: the one piece of advice if you're bad at time management is get busier. Fill your schedule with things.
That'll force you to...
Idleness. Whitfield said, "There's nothing and nobody I despise more on earth than idleness and idle people." I just say, mend that. Idleness is terrible for you. Never be doing nothing. So if you have a job, guys, well, get a second job. If you don't have a girlfriend, get a third job. If you don't have a family, you've got lots of time to utilize. Volunteer for more things. Don't volunteer for less. So, because time management and productivity is a muscle. And the less you use it, the less effective you get at it, the less strong it gets. So I know guys who they sort of go, oh, I've been working so hard, I'm so stressed, time management is so bad, I'm going to dial back to 80%. So they give up some things. But soon enough, their 80% becomes their 100% capacity.
Yep.
And they go, oh man, I'm so busy, I need to dial back to 80%, which is now maybe 60% of their original capacity.
Yep.
And they just keep on doing it until they're preaching one sermon every 2 weeks and one meeting in the week, and they go, man, I just can't believe I have no time to do anything. So get busier. Now, busier is not the same as productive. I know that. You can be very busy, you're not very productive. You want to be productive, but you get very productive by getting really busy and then working the muscle of time management so that you can manage it well.
Yep.
Okay? So in ways that will not hurt and offend or damage other people's productivity. You're not wasting other people's time, but get busy doing more, and then as the ground shakes in your busyness, everything will shuffle down into its right priority. So volunteer for more ministries, do more work, read more stuff, set higher goals, and then delegate properly and time manage well with some of the advice that I've given. And if they're at Hope, ask one of the elders, how can I do this? Because we've got very productive elders. Keith runs his own businesses, plural, and all the stuff he does on top of Hope, stuff like that. So, but get busier and then utilize that to become more productive in your busyness. Time management is a muscle. It will fade and wither if not used.
Very good. Thanks for tuning in to Carpool Q&A. If you've got questions on the ministry, on preaching, on pastoring, on church planting, any things we talk about, drop them below. We'll get to them next week. Very good.
Sweet.
Carpool
Catches.
out.